Hello, my name is Nigel Hedley. I'm a friend of Mohammed Abu Mazen's. He works at the Area D hostel in Ramallah, which is where I met him. Great man, great dancer. Ask him to dance, ask him to show you his traditional dancing. He's fantastic. He's asked me to just tell you about a few of the experiences I've had on my Palestinian trips. I've had a couple of trips over there over the last year. A friend of mine's there at the moment. The first time I went, I stayed in Jerusalem for the first night because it was quite late. The next day I took a trip to Hebron in a taxi. I noticed straight away we drove along a road that had very high fences along both sides of the road, and the fence goes behind Palestinian villages, cutting them off from the land and the crops behind that. In order for the people there to harvest or work in their fields, they've got to leave the village, walk up a road towards a main road where there is a checkpoint set up with armoured vehicles. They're harassed for several hours sometimes at these checkpoints. They then have to walk up the road, the main road, to the next path, the next road that goes down, through another checkpoint, and then follow a path back behind, parallel to the road, back to behind their own house, 20 or 50 yards at the most behind their own house, where their own orchards and olive groves are. And as I was driving along in the taxi through there, I noticed that at each checkpoint there were soldiers pointing guns at 3 children carrying a large basket of fruit that these children were quite happy, quite jovial, smiling. Yes, we've got our fruit. They were strolling down the road, and at the checkpoint they just left, the soldiers following them with his rifle. At the checkpoint they go into, the soldiers waiting for him to arrive, following them. I was taught as a young child, you do not point guns at people unless you intend to shoot them. You don't do it, it's wrong. For these people to be pointing weapons at these little children for doing nothing more than collecting their fruits, their own crops, was horrific. If I hadn't been a passenger, if I'd been driving that car, that taxi, been able to stop, I would have probably done something very stupid. I would have confronted the soldiers. The taxi driver knew better and he wouldn't stop and continue. We went to the Abraham's tomb at Al-Khalil or Hebron, and because I turned up in a Israeli plated taxi, I was waved straight into the place. I've got a pacemaker, so I asked them to turn the metal detector off. I had a bag with me with cameras and stuff in the bag. All that they asked was, do you have a pocket knife? I said, no, I don't have a pocket knife. They said, oh, it's okay, let me through. You go through, everything's fine. There was no real security for me. However, the Palestinians that want to visit the same mosque are forced to go through a checkpoint on Shahada Street. Big metal gates, big barrier. They're searched, they're harassed, they give them grief. It can take them hours to get from the end of the street, the 50 to 80 yards, to the mosque. It's ridiculous. I'm sent straight through there. We stopped for something to eat, and while I was at a shop there, I noticed 2 9-year-old children throwing stones towards an armoured vehicle. Not at it, the vehicle was 150 yards away. The stones that they were throwing fell far short, so it was making 30-40 yards. This didn't prevent the 2 soldiers getting out of one of the armoured vehicles and firing at these 9-year-old children. I don't know whether they were rubber bullets or live rounds, but they came whistling past us. You know, I found it very difficult to understand the levels of aggression there. At the Palestinian villages, the checkpoints and queues to their villages, long queues, loads of harassment. To the Israeli villages, they still have the checkpoints with the armoured vehicles there, but they just wave straight through. There's no delays, there's no harassment, there's no grief. It's absolutely appalling. I attended a couple of protests, peaceful protests. I've never thrown a rock at anybody in my life. So during these protests, one in Ramallah, near the checkpoint there, peaceful protesters, minding their own business. Next thing you know, gas rained down on us. Well, I managed to keep away from the edge of the gas on that occasion, But an hour or so later, everything quietened down, the protesters had left, there was no real problem. I walked down closer towards the checkpoint to take some footage of the wall art and the apartheid wall and whatever there, when suddenly more gas rained down on us, and it was blowing straight towards us. I have a pacemaker, so I was struggling to get away from this gas. It was slowly overtaking me, and some young kid staggered out of this gas, collapsed, very, very pale, and was throwing up, vomiting. I managed to get hold of him and help him up the street, but my eyes were streaming with gas. A very young child, 10-year-old maybe, who lives there, wasn't a protester, he actually lives on the street where this happens every week, came out, tapped me on the shoulder and was pressing this onion to me. You know, you sniff the onion. And he explained that this will make your eyes water and wash the gas out, you know, and was very helpful. Now, when you compare the level of violence and aggression from the Israelis, you would expect to see a lot of hate in return from the Palestinians, but I've not found that to be the case. The Palestinians are very, very hospitable, very friendly. I went on one occasion to visit Nablus to buy kanafi, which is a fantastic food, and while I was there, I had my bag with me, with my passport, this bag, with my passport in, everything like that, and after sitting and eating on some steps, I walked away, I forgot my bag, my passport and everything, and it was some time before I actually realised that I had forgotten it. And I checked out all the places that I bought food at, but I couldn't remember where I'd eaten, where these steps were that I'd sat and eaten at. And with my heart condition, I was sweating, I was exhausted, I was in a very poor state, and I saw a policeman, and I asked him if anybody had handed the bag in. He saw that I was in a state, he took me to a jeweller's shop, sat me down, gave me lemonade to drink, told me not to worry, that they would find my bag, that it wouldn't be stolen, which I found hard to believe. He got on his radio, 3 other people turned up who asked me which shops I'd been to, where I'd been, and they figured out the last place that I knew I had my bag. And they took me back to that place, and they sat me down, gave me another drink, wouldn't let me pay for the cold drinks. They took me up the road, and there was 3 or 4 different ways I could have gone. And they took me up the first one, no it wasn't this one, I didn't recognise it. They took me up the second one, no it wasn't this one, I didn't recognise it. Up the third one, up these steps, I recognised some scarves. And yes, it was this way. They took me to where I found the steps that I'd been sitting on, but there was no bag there. And I went, oh, there's the steps, but there's no bag. Now the guy in the shop next to it saw me, I've got your bag, I've got your bag. Now this guy at this shop sold dried fruits, nuts and things like that. And I got my bag, I checked everything was in there, my cameras, my cigarettes, my passports, everything that I needed. I was very relieved. And I offered him 100 shekels reward, and he wouldn't take it, and the people that were with me, no, he doesn't need to take it, he doesn't need it, he doesn't want it. But the guy would not, the shopkeeper would not let me leave without giving me a big bag of his fruit and nuts. It was very, very kind of him. And I got my bag returned. Because I was in a bit of a state at that point, they put me in a taxi, which I was sharing with a woman with a child with, and went back to Ramallah. However, on the way back to Ramallah, there was a checkpoint set up, a moving checkpoint. They put armoured vehicles and spiky strips across the road at all 3 parts of this junction, and they were sending everybody, whichever way they'd come from, back the way they had come. Right, so I couldn't see why they were doing this and thought it was simply harassment. So I confronted one of the soldiers and said that, you know, I couldn't see the point in this. They tried to tell me that there was a security issue that they wouldn't disclose in the direction that I wanted to go in. So we couldn't go that way. But I pointed out that they were sending people that had come from the direction of this incident and were sending them back that way. Children in the cars, families in cars were being sent back that way. So it was quite clear that they were lying, that there wasn't an incident and they were just doing this to harass the civilians. You know, this is the difference between the Israelis and the Palestinians and mentality. When I went up to the hostel one day, which is on the 5th floor, I got in the lift, I pressed the button, 5th floor. It went up one floor and an old man got in, going to his car. He had one loaf of bread in a bag, and he looked as he pressed the button. "Oh, you going to a hostel? You visitor? You tourist?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "You're welcome. You're very welcome here." And he tried to give me the only loaf of bread that he had just bought. That is the generosity and kindness of these people. It's innate. It's in their nature. At one point, I bought a guy a telephone, a mobile phone, so he could send me images and video footage from Wimalo after I'd come back home. And in the shop that I was in, they realised I was buying this phone for him, and everybody was quite happy. "Oh, you're buying this for him?" And there was some laughter and some joking going on. And an old man strolled in. "What are you celebrating in here? Can I join in?" You know, that is the nature of these people. I got to know the bread sellers, the kebab owners. I do like my food. The corn sellers, and every one of them invited me to their homes where I was given feasts. The people open their homes, their hearts, their kindness. It's very, very difficult to comprehend the difference in attitude between these two people. I once spoke to a stone-throwing protester and said, "Well, you've got these slingshots and whatever. Why don't you make bows and arrows? You know, make your weapons a little bit more powerful?" And they said, "Oh, no, somebody might get killed if we do that." And I said, "Well, is that not the point?" And they said, no, we don't want to kill anybody. We just want them to leave our land. We don't want to kill them. We just want them to leave our land." There's no hatred. There seems to be no hatred by the Muslim Palestinians or the Christian Palestinians towards the Jewish. This narrative of hatred just doesn't seem to exist. I went to visit the village of Nabu Salih, and as soon as one of the residents there, Osama, found out I wanted to visit the place, he escorted me. He showed me around the olive groves, around the old mosque. He even took me into the minaret of the new mosque for the views. He invited me into his house. We had a meal, we had drinks. Very, very friendly people. The children running around the streets shouting, "Who are you? What is your name?" Very cheeky, very beautiful, very fantastic place. But Nabu Salih is cut off from the spring by a road. They can't use this spring anymore, but being European, I'm quite entitled, quite happy to go. So I walked down the hill, crossed over the barrier, but before I got to the barrier, a police Land Rover had turned up. "You go back to your Palestinian friends, don't come down here from there." I said, "Look, I've got a European passport, it's a public place, I can go where I like." So me and my friend, we went to visit the spring, and the settlers, "No, your Palestinian friends, they've just come here, they're bad, they try to bomb us, they try to kill us," which was totally against their nature, total lies. And they just kept going on and on and on at us all the time we were there. And within a few minutes, 3 trucks full of soldiers turned up. It's just the mentality of the place there. I just cannot understand how these Israeli people can be so cruel. They say there's no apartheid state, but there's a big apartheid wall. The people who are treated under martial law, the Palestinians, but the Israelis are treated under a much more lenient civil law, and yet they say there's no apartheid. I think a lot of people hear a great deal about how bad the violence and the troubles are over there, but nobody really seems to focus on the other side of it, so the beauty of the people. You know, I've been invited into so many people's homes, been welcomed there, got to know their families. They are the most welcoming, kindest, decent, most honourable people I have ever met on my travels, and especially the people at the Area D hostel, who are the most hospitable hostel people I have ever met in my life. So thank you for taking the time to watch my rather dull statements, but I hope it helps Mohammed, and I hope to see you as soon as I'm fit and well again. Thank you very much. Bye.